On the 13th of October, 1864, a quiet morning broke over Elm Creek, Texas, where settler families toiled on their farms, unaware of the danger ahead. Then, 500 Comanche and Kiowa warriors swept in, their horses shaking the ground, arrows cutting through the air. By nightfall, 11 settlers were dead, 7 women and children taken captive, and a frontier trembled amid the chaos of the Civil War. Why did these native warriors fight so fiercely to defend their way of life? And what drove settlers to cling to this dangerous land? Join us to uncover the story of a clash that shaped the American West. On the sweeping Great Plains, where dust swirled under endless skies, the Comanche built a legacy as fierce as the land they called home. For young men like Peta Nocona, a warrior in the 1800s, becoming a man meant proving courage through battle, whether hunting buffalo or facing enemies under the blazing Texas sun. This wasn't just tradition, it was the pulse of Comanche life. Spanish explorers in the 1700s and American agents in the 1840s wrote of the price of failure. A young man who avoided combat faced scorn from his village, labeled a coward. By 1800, Comancheria, a vast region spanning Texas, New Mexico, and Oklahoma, housed up to 20,000 Comanche, their way of life shaped by horses they mastered after the 1680 Pueblo Revolt. But as settlers and disease crept closer, was this fierce code of honor their strength or a path to endless conflict? Comanche raids were more than violence, they were a way to earn respect. Warriors like Peta Nocona would ride close to an enemy, touching them in a daring act called counting coup, risking death for honor. Scalps and captives over 1,000 taken from 1820 to 1860, according to historians, marked a warrior's status, with some captives adopted into the tribe or traded in markets as far as Santa Fe. Unlike settler wars over land, Comanche raids blended survival with pride, securing horses while preserving their nomadic identity. To settlers building farms and towns, these acts seemed brutal, yet for the Comanche, they were a stand against a world that threatened to erase them. Were these raids chaos, as settlers claimed, or a bold defense of a free-roaming life? This warrior spirit didn't just define the Comanche, it stopped the American frontier cold. In 1837 alone, raids killed over 200 settlers, burning homes and stealing livestock, as Texas records show. Comancheria's 240,000 square miles held off Spanish missions in the 1700s and Mexican towns in the 1820s, with peace talks like the 1835 treaty crumbling in distrust. To settlers, the Comanche were a nightmare. To the Comanche, each raid protected their buffalo-filled plains. By slowing American expansion for decades, they raised a question. Were they ruthless attackers, as newspapers screamed, or guardians of a way of life, fighting with every arrow to survive? By the 1850s, the Comanche, renowned for their swift horseback raids across the Great Plains, faced new threats that tested their strength. Their mastery of horses, honed since the 1680 Pueblo Revolt, had once made them unstoppable, striking settlements and vanishing into the vast plains. But Texas Rangers, like Captain John Coffeehays, fought back with a game-changer, the Colt revolver. First introduced in 1836 and improved by 1847, this 6-shot weapon matched the Comanche's rapid-fire bows, which could loose 20 arrows a minute. In the 1840 Council House fight in San Antonio, 35 Comanche warriors fell, showing the revolver's deadly power. Yet, warriors like young Peta Nocona, raised on hit-and-run tactics, still outmaneuvered settlers, slipping away into the Llano Estacado. Could these new weapons truly stop a people who thrived on speed and surprise? A deadlier foe struck the Comanche, disease. Smallpox in 1849 and cholera in the 1850s ravaged bands like the Peta Nocona, cutting their numbers from 20,000 in the early 1800s to under 5,000 by 1860. For leaders like Chief Iron Jacket, the choice was stark-signed treaties like the 1853 Fort Atkinson Agreement. Trading freedom for reservation, life, and supplies, or fight to preserve their nomadic ways. To young warriors like Peta Nocona, farming and fences felt like a betrayal of their free-roaming life. Texas settler accounts show how these warriors rejected peace deals, much like other tribes such as the Cheyenne. Could the Comanche adapt to survive, or would their traditions demand a final stand? Then, in 1861, the Civil War changed everything. With 60,000 Texas men, most of fighting age, gone to battles like Shiloh, frontier defenses crumbled. Settlers like those in Young County lived in fear as forts emptied. Union and Confederate agents offered peace and goods, but broken promises like those in early 1861 treaties fueled distrust. By 1863, the Comanche and their Kiowa allies, united since a 1790 pact, struck hard, killing over 200 settlers and pushing the frontier back 200 miles, a retreat unmatched in U.S. history. The war's chaos gave the tribes a chance to reclaim their power, their raids shaking the plains. How long could this resurgence last against a nation ready to rebuild? In the fall of 1864, as the Civil War left Texas's frontier wide open, a Comanche war chief named Peta Nocona saw a chance to strike. Inspired by signs in nature, perhaps an eagle soaring over the plains, he rallied 500 to 700 Comanche and Kiowa warriors, a force unseen in years. This wasn't just a gathering, it was a revival of their strength. Fueled by the chief's spiritual vision, which Kiowa stories later described as a sacred promise of victory. For warriors like Peta Nocona, joining this war party meant honoring their ancestors and protecting their way of life. But for settlers, this growing force spelled terror. How did one leader's call unite a people to challenge the frontier? Before riding to Elm Creek, the camp came alive with an ancient ritual. Around a blazing fire, warriors like Peta Nocona painted their faces black, chanting and stomping to summon courage. Women, like Peta Nocona's sister, joined in, their voices urging the men toward glory while preparing supplies and leather ties. These war dances, described in 1860s records, weren't just ceremony, they steeled the warriors for battle, blending faith and discipline. To settlers, such rituals seemed strange. But to the Comanche, they were the heartbeat of their resolve. Could this unity of spirit and strategy explain their fearsome raids? Under the glow of a full moon in October 1864, the war party set out, each warrior with 3 horses for speed and endurance. Since mastering Spanish Mustangs in the 1680s, the Comanche had turned the plains into their weapon, covering 50 miles a night, as military reports noted. Moving by moonlight, they could strike and vanish before dawn, outpacing settler militias tied to slow wagons. For settlers, this mobility was a nightmare. For the Comanche, it was survival. Was this strategy a stroke of genius or a skill honed over centuries of defending their freedom? As Peta Nocona led his warriors toward Elm Creek, their raid would leave a lasting mark on history. On the 13th of October, 1864, as dawn broke over Elm Creek in Young County, Texas, 14 settler families began their daily work. Unaware of the danger approaching, under a full moon, 500 to 700 Comanche and Kiowa warriors, led by Peta Nocona, swept in, their horses shaking the autumn grass. A father, John Carter, and his sons, startled while tending crops, fled into dense thickets for cover. The warriors, skilled in battle, ignored them, targeting easier prey to avoid heavy losses. Texas records show this was no mercy but strategy. Comanche raids, honed over centuries, kept losses low by striking fast and avoiding strongholds. Were these choices a sign of cunning, or a chilling setup for the destruction to come? Near Fort Belknap, the warriors found Mr. Myers searching for lost cattle. In moments, arrows struck him down, his scalp taken as a trophy for a Comanche village, a mark of honor for warriors like Peta Nocona. To settlers, this was brutal, a tragedy written in tearful letters. But for the Comanche, facing shrinking buffalo herds down 50% by the 1860s, per-study scalping was both ritual and survival, a way to prove strength in a threatened world. Was this act savagery, as settlers cried, or a desperate fight to preserve their way of life? At the Fitzpatrick house, Elizabeth Fitzpatrick stood alone, rifle in hand. Her shot missed, and arrows swiftly ended her stand. Her body left in the yard. Inside, 3 women and 5 children hid, helpless. 7 were tied and taken, bound for the plains, some to join Comanche families, others to be traded, like Millie Durgan, later freed by Britt Johnson in 1865. But a 1-2-year-old boy, claimed by rival warriors, was killed in their dispute. Settler diaries call this cruelty, yet it shows the Comanche's own rivalries, driven by honor. Does this tragedy reveal mindless violence, or a clash of 2 worlds, each fighting for survival in a brutal frontier? As the sun rose on the 13th of October, 1864, the Comanche and Kiowa warriors, fresh from their deadly strikes at Elm Creek, rode west, leaving fear in their wake. They met a challenge in Thornton Hamby, a wounded Confederate soldier from the 30th Texas Cavalry, and his father, James Hamby. On horseback with rifles ready, the Hambys retreated carefully across the prairie, one firing while the other reloaded, keeping the 500 to 700 warriors at bay. Their steady tactics, learned from frontier fights like the 1858 Antelope Hills battle, frustrated the Comanches' attempts to surround them. To the warriors, this was a test of skill. To the Hambys, it was survival. Could this father and son's courage slow a force built on speed? As the Hambys fell back, Doc Wilson, a local doctor, galloped up, having ridden miles to warn nearby families. The three raced to the Bragg Ranch, a sturdy cabin with slits for shooting. But tragedy struck Wilson, holding the door, took a Comanche arrow to the heart, falling dead. His sacrifice, noted in settler accounts, gave the Hambys time to barricade inside. For the Comanche, like Peta Nocona, this was a warrior's honor. For settlers, it was a heartbreaking loss. Texas records show such cabins, built tough since the 1840s, were last stands. Did this defiance mark a shift? Or just delay the inevitable? Inside the Bragg Ranch, the fight grew fierce. Susan Bragg and other women stood with the men, reloading rifles with steady hands amid war cries and gunfire. Their courage, seen in sieges like the 1836 Bird's Fort, turned the cabin into a fortress, dropping up to 20 warriors, per settler reports. The Comanche hid their losses, carrying away their fallen, as was their way. For settlers, this teamwork showed their strength. For the warriors, each loss stung but fueled their resolve. Could this unlikely stand-by men and women together hold off a war party driven by honor? On the 13th of October, 1864, the Bragg Ranch cabin stood firm against the Comanche and Kiowa onslaught, its walls battered by arrows and bullets. Normally, warriors like Peta Nocona avoided long fights, favoring quick strikes to save strength. But, buoyed by early wins at Elm Creek, the 500 to 700 warriors, led by Peta Nocona, charged the cabin, chasing the honor of touching a living enemy, a daring act called counting coup. The Hambys and their allies fired back with deadly aim through the cabin slits. Then, a single bullet felled Peta Nocona. His fall, a devastating blow. To the Comanche, this was more than a loss. It was a sign their spiritual strength had failed, as Kiowa tales later shared. The warriors pulled back, their cries fading. Could one leader's death stop a raid that seemed unstoppable? Inside the cabin, Thornton Hamby, wounded by arrows, and his father James, weak from exhaustion, barely held on. The warriors, true to their ways, split into small groups of 20 to 50, vanishing northwest with over 300 stolen cattle and captives like Millie Durgan, per Texas records. This retreat wasn't defeat, but a clever move, honed over centuries, to avoid pursuit. For settlers, it was a fleeting victory. For the Comanche, a way to fight another day. Did this retreat show their brilliance, or just delay a looming clash? The raid's terror lingered. On their way back, warriors killed stragglers like Mr. McCoy and his son, scalping them on the open prairie, adding to the 11 settler deaths. Near a river, 15 Texas Rangers, likely under Captain James Buck Berry, fell into an ambush, losing 5 men, their bodies left behind. These clashes, noted in survivor accounts, showed how the Comanche's speed kept them ahead, outrunning slower militias. Their hit-and-run tactics, used since the 1700s, frustrated settlers' hopes of stopping them. As the warriors faded into the plains, carrying scalps and captives, one question remains. How did their clever escapes keep them free against a nation determined to win? When the dust settled over Elm Creek on the 13th of October, 1864, the Comanche and Kiowa warriors vanished into the plains, leaving devastation in Young County. Their moonlit raid, stealing over 1,000 horses and cattle and 7 captives, showcased their skill, as Texas records note. It sent panic through settlers, forcing them to abandon outposts and pushing the frontier back 200 miles, a retreat unmatched in U.S. history. With the Civil War draining Texas of 60,000 men, forts stood empty, giving warriors like Peta Nocona a chance to strike back. For settlers, it was terror. For the Comanche, a bold stand. Did this raid show mere aggression, or a desperate fight to preserve their freedom? The cost was heavy for both sides. 11 settlers, like Elizabeth Fitzpatrick and Mr. Myers, and 5 Texas Rangers died, their scalps taken as trophies. 7 captives, including Millie Durgan, faced harsh marches, some adopted, others freed by men like Britt Johnson in 1865. The Comanche lost up to 60 warriors, their bodies hidden to mask the toll, per military reports. Buffalo herds, down from 30 million in 1800 to under 1,000 by 1880, and settler trails threatened their way of life. Was this bloodshed a clash of savagery, or two peoples fighting for survival in a divided world? Elm Creek's impact reshaped the West. The raid's boldness sparked campaigns like the 1864 Adobe Walls Battle and led to the 1867 Medicine Lodge Treaty, which promised peace but brought reservation life and broken pledges. Yet, the Comanches' horsemanship, spiritual strength, and honor, seen in daring acts like counting coup, earned respect, influencing U.S. cavalry tactics. Their fight delayed American expansion for decades, challenging tales that cast them as mere barriers. As their story fades into history, how do we honor a people whose fierce resistance left a lasting mark? The Elm Creek Raid of the 13th of October, 1864, left scars on both Comanche warriors like Peta Nocona and settlers like the Hambys, a clash of two worlds fighting for their place. The Comanches' skill on horseback, deep beliefs, and unyielding spirit defined their stand from 1700s buffalo hunts to 1860s raids. Their sacrifice up to 60 warriors and the settlers' losses, 11 lives demand respect for both sides' resilience. Today, as we reflect on broken treaties, lost lands, and vanished herds, how can we honor the Comanches' legacy? By facing the past honestly, we can build a future that values their strength. Share your thoughts below. What does this history mean to you?